draft, it's obvious, we're drafting based on what we know. And that feeds into average draft positions that we see, which reinforces how we should draft, which is based on, again, what we know. And it's this cycle. And it takes usually a notable event for a player or one of the player's teammates in that depth chart at that same position that will change how we perceive a player's value. And then that changes how we draft them. And then that changes their ADP. Jaydon Blue has had a very interesting preseason. On the one hand, a former assistant coach called him borderline lazy. And then on the other hand, he's getting the first reps with the first team. And that's as of a couple days ago. So which is it? Is he borderline lazy, or is he deserving of being the starter? If the season were to start today, would that be a possibility? And the answer might be both. The answer could be that earlier this season, he was accurately perceived as not putting in the kind of work that he needed to put in. Maybe he was wrongly perceived. Regardless, people who hear that news are going to then be influenced by what they think of Jaydon Blue. Not everyone. Some people just ignore it, which is great. That's the whole point. We can't get sucked into that because at the end of the day, what happens beginning in August and then into September, that's in the early days of September, before we draft, before week one, that is what impacts, our decision making. But the problem is ADPs are influenced by news like that. I guarantee you Jaydon Blue's value after that news was not helped by it. He is currently the RB 43. And he is, before it was announced that he was getting first team reps, he was still third in the pecking order. If you look at ADPs, Javonte Williams, RB 35, and Miles Sanders, for at least a while, was maybe not close to him in ADP, but was listed on the initial depth chart as the number 2 running back, which only matters because he's a veteran. Who knows if that would really matter with ADP? Most people saw through it and realized that Sanders was not the guy to roster in that backfield, at least not at this point. But it is notable when a rookie gets that kind of news story, where a former assistant coach says he's borderline lazy. That's pretty significant. And there are, to a lesser extent, other news stories about players that occur throughout the summer that then influence ADP, that then create potential buying opportunities. Because those news stories often, as I've pointed out before, are things that people report because they need to write a certain number of articles that day. Or, in this case with the assistant coach, maybe disgruntled, maybe accurate. Who knows? But it has to be reported. It's on a podcast, and then everyone's going to talk about it because it's out there. I think that we as fantasy managers need to have the discipline to say when a news story like that comes out that puts someone down, that diminishes one's value in some way. And it could be as simple as, if the story had been, well, Jaydon Blue has been running with the backups the entire summer. It looks like Javonte Williams is going to be the starter. Well, good. Because if I believe in Jaydon Blue as a talent, and if I don't believe Javonte Williams is going to lead this backfield, then I'm kind of happy in the summer if Jaydon Blue is running with the backups. Let him. Because eventually, when the games start mattering, I think Blue will rise to the top eventually, and that's what I want in a bargain running back. It reminds me a little bit in the opposite spectrum of Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore a couple summers ago, specifically Kadarius Toney, who was a first-round pick by the Giants. They unloaded him for pennies to the Chiefs in, I think, year 2. And the Chiefs, he caught a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Things were looking up for him heading into the 2023 season. His ADP was somewhere in the top 50. I'm looking it up right now. It was 45, and it was Sky Moore was 48, and right between them, interestingly enough, were Treylon Burks and Zay Flowers, which just goes to show also how ADP is ridiculous. Um, That's that could be another podcast, or it already has been. The Kadarius Toney, so much hype that summer. If you look back and do a news search on Google for Kadarius Toney stories, you will see how excited the Chiefs were from Andy Reid on down about the role he was going to play. And yeah, they drafted Rashee Rice, but Toney was expected week one to be the number one guy, and it was essentially his job to lose at the outset, and he lost it spectacularly. He had I think he caught one of five passes for like -1 yards, fumbled it once or twice. His career effectively ended that night, week one against Detroit. Sky Moore didn't catch a pass on 3 targets. I remember recommending both. I recommended starting both. Even though I liked Detroit's defense as an undervalued defense, there was no way I would have suggested starting Detroit's defense in week one against the Chiefs. I mean, that would have been ridiculous. And yet, Detroit's defense outplayed Toney and Moore combined, and it wasn't even close. Um, it, it then brought up questions. I remember after that debacle, 2 questions for me at the time. Well, do I recommend dropping Toney at this point? Like, is this pretty much the end? Or do you chalk it up to just one bad game and really bad game, and he'll get back on firm footing? He's too talented to, to be down for too long, essentially. And the next game he did catch all 5 of his passes. He caught 13 of his next 14 targets. He didn't do much with them. But he still, I mean, I don't think he scored any of them, but he seemed to find some groove. And then that was it. He had 1 touchdown pass in week 6, no touchdown, 1 touchdown reception, in week 6, and then nothing else. And he was essentially droppable after week 1. Just like I feared, because I had really believed that he could be a top 45, top 40 guy in that offense. All the hype that summer that pointed to him being great. What did it mean? And that was the other question I asked myself. It wasn't just when do I recommend dropping him or when do I drop him myself? It's also how can I trust this hype in the future? How can I trust when people are saying this player is really turning a corner, they're going to be great. There's no limit to their ceiling. One of his coaches said that, something like, there is no limit to how good he can be, or something. Like, you love hearing that if you drafted Kadarius Toney or if you think he's a bargain. But the fact is, none of that mattered. What mattered was week 1. And then what mattered was he didn't make the necessary adjustments in the following weeks to demonstrate that he could be the number 1 on that team. And so he lost that privilege. And now he's effectively finished, just like Sky Moore. So when I saw that news about Jaydon Blue earlier this summer, and it wasn't just news, it was a former assistant coach saying it, my first thought was, good. Let people say that this 4th-round rookie is lazy. Maybe it'll light a fire under him. And if it's not true, then even better, because then it's just bunk. And what he does on the field will matter. And what is said about him won't. One thing to keep in mind also about news is that ADPs are guided by the news we hear. It's not guided by all news. So if somebody heard that story about Jaydon Blue, but didn't hear that he's running with first teamers, in practice, that's pretty notable, because then you are influenced by the bad news and with no knowledge of the good news. Sometimes good news is buried. Sometimes bad news is buried. You have to dig for it. There might be someone who writes about something that doesn't get picked up on all these, news, compendiums out there of of tracking everything that's happening. But you might find there's something that's notable. And those types of stories, those types of reports, I love. The other reports, I don't really follow. I don't want to follow, except if they lower the value of a player that I'm high on, and then I love it. And Jaydon Blue fits that category of a rookie who got a bad shake to start the preseason. Value went down, and that created an enormous buying opportunity. I'm BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners. Follow me on the blog. Email me anytime. We'll see you tomorrow.